Hello, and welcome to FI for Kids, a podcast about guiding your kids on the path to financial independence and extraordinary lives. I'm your host, Dominic Delacqua. Today, we're going to talk about the importance of parents planning for their children's future with a comprehensive estate plan. Our guest is Oscar Vasquez. Oscar is an estate planning expert and the founder of EstateDocPlanning.com. And we're going to have an overview conversation about estate planning, why it matters, how it functions, even when you don't need it yet, and how to get started. So, welcome, Oscar, and thanks for coming on the show.
Well, I'm super excited to have it. I really truly believe that our kids are our future, and I think education in the beginning stages, in the early stages, is something good. So, but thank you for having me, Dominic. Thank you.
So, why don't we just start by you telling us a little bit about your background and then how you got into estate planning?
Yeah, well, I've been in estate planning probably pretty consistently for about a year and a half, but I've been in the real estate space for about 28 years. And I've been, helping buyers and sellers. And I got into estate planning because we started to see attorneys' fees get crazy expensive. And I mean, crazy expensive went from attorneys were charging from like $700, they went to $3,000 to $5,000 in cost because the state fees went up. And they got so far behind, their fees started to go up, and it would take longer to create an estate plan. So we created the software. So we got into it to have a solution that becomes more economical and more reachable to the masses. And two, we made it less complicated because we use layman terms when we help people fill out the estate plan.
Oh, that's good. That's great. I'm sure that's super useful for people. So, then talk about why someone would want to do estate planning, how that might protect their future,
Yeah.
and maybe how that provides some more peace of mind. So, why
Yeah.
why is estate planning so important?
Well, estate planning is super important. I'll get into that, but I want first of all, it's important that you understand what estate planning and what a living trust is. And it's if you understand the fundamentals and the basics of what it is, it's an agreement between the grantor, which usually the parents, and the beneficiaries, which are usually the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a contract between you telling your kids in writing on what you want to have happen when you're no longer here. And the courts help enforce that to make sure that they're not your wishes, they're your demands because it's written in a legal document. So
Mm-hmm.
in layman's terms, it's a contract between you and your kids to let them know who gets what and when.
Okay.
In a nutshell, or an estate plan means you decide what happens to your minor children, what happens to your home, your assets, your retirement account, and anything of value. Right. And we'll talk about some of the strangest things I never even knew that had so much value, like fragrances. Man, that was amazing.
Hmm.
Yeah. And they're not called colognes or perfumes because when it's over $200, $270 or $300 a bottle, it's called fragrance.
Interesting. Hmm.
Yeah. Anyways, I just thought I learned that the couple about a week ago, and that's still mind-boggling. So having an estate plan, you decide what happens to your things, your retirement accounts, and all your assets. That's the first and the plan that everybody should want to have. Now, if you don't take action, by default, you're allowing the government, the courts, to be able to decide for you. If you have young children, something happens to you and your spouse, if you don't have a guardianship estate plan in place, which is part of a comprehensive estate plan, the state takes them into social services, they have a hearing, and then they figure out where they're going to place the child. At the
Yeah.
very least, they're going to be in social services for 1 to 2 days. To prevent that from happening, you should have an estate plan. And I'll give you a quick story that I like to say. One of the reasons why I got involved with estate planning is that we would hear a lot of the conversations with the attorneys when the parents would die, they didn't have an estate plan in place. The attorneys would say, okay, your total probate cost is going to be 36,000. They're like, we don't have 36,000. They say, okay, no problem. I'll wait until the end. What do you mean the end? Well, you could sell the house after. Like, wait a minute, this is my dad's house. I don't want to sell the house. Well,
Right.
then you have to refinance it. But if there's a mortgage on the house, they didn't have life insurance, they don't have it, and they have very little equity, they're going to be forced to sell the house because there was no estate plan in place.
Right, right. And so
Right?
it goes to the court, right? You're spending a lot of money there with the courts, right, in probate, and then it takes a long time. Anybody can challenge it. It gets really complicated.
It
Is that
becomes
is
a
that right?
public, yeah, that is correct. So it gets even worse. Then the court says now we have to publish the entire information of what the assets have of the deceased, so the kids won't get any of the assets, anything, for 12 to 18 months. Imagine any of your beneficiaries not having access to the assets. How are they going to live? How are they going to survive this mode if they're young children?
Yeah.
Right? This is going to be in limbo. So
Well,
not
and
having,
even if they're
right.
adult kids, right, it's still it's the opposite of peace of mind, right? It's anxiety and stress producing, right? If they're adult kids and the parents have passed and they want to just be able to sort of grieve and process things and move on. It's work anyway to deal with an estate, but when you've got these kind of complications, it just really adds a lot of unnecessary stress and just prolongs the process and just makes everything worse. So why don't so an estate plan, right? So a comprehensive estate plan involves more than just one thing. So why don't we talk about what those components are, give people an overview of what's involved in an estate plan, what documents and legal things, and then we can dive into some of those details.
Perfect. Comprehensive estate plan should have the very bare minimum, which is one, the legal description to keep it out from probate. That's the first. And that's what we would call the foundation, which is the living trust.
Okay.
Okay. The second thing is going to be what's called a healthcare directive. A healthcare directive, and then another document that is super important, what's called a HIPAA waiver. But a doctor cannot release documents unless the person that is incapacitated has signed a HIPAA waiver, even
Yeah.
if it's your spouse.
And just to clarify, right? So for anybody who's not familiar, the HIPAA is something that every time you go to the doctor's office or any sort of medical thing, you fill out a form. That's the Health Information and Privacy and Affordability Act. That's what the HIPAA stands for, and that's where the doctors are required to keep your information private. So what you're saying, Oscar, is if you don't have that included in your estate plan, who can have access to your information? Again, it complicates things and potentially mucks up the works when someone's got to make decisions, your medical decisions, if you're no longer able to, right?
Yeah, I'll give, yes. And another document that is super important is called the financial power of attorney. Now, the power of attorney that comes with the estate plan is only good while you become incapacitated. Once you pass, then the living trust takes over.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then I've got two. Well, I'll summarize all that in a second, but one more question first. So then everybody, I think, is familiar with a will, your last will and testament. Is
Yeah.
that part of the estate plan? And if so, what is it used for?
Yes, that, yeah, absolutely. A will. There's also that was another document that comes with your estate, your comprehensive estate plan, and it's called a pour over will. And a pour over will, it means that if you forgot to put something into the estate pass, the pour over will says, I want anything that's over $5,000 to be into the living trust.
And so if I understand you right, so you have a pour over will and you now is it an automatic $5,000 or do you specify an
No,
amount?
you specify that amount.
Okay, so we'll stick with that example. And so you just say anything that I have that's worth more than $5,000 that I forgot to include in my living trust automatically gets included in there when I die. Is that right?
That
I
is
understand
that
that
is
right?
correct. That
Okay.
is correct.
Okay. So now which document is it where parents with minor kids then make the legal arrangements for who would want to have guardianship of their kids if they were to somehow pass away unexpectedly? What document is that?
That's called the guardianship award. So what you would want, and there's two types.
Okay.
There's a temporary. Say you have four options. any one of these four people can take them as long as whoever is available
Yeah.
of these four can take temporary custody of my children,
Mhm.
right? This means if you're incapacitated or you can't take care of your children to prevent them from going to social services,
Yeah.
any one of these four people. And we always say we want any one of those four people to be within an hour's driving distance of where you live.
Oh,
That's what we
sure.
recommend,
Yeah, that makes sense.
right? And then you have what's called permanent guardianship.
Mhm.
And we always, part of the orientation that we do is we always say, when it's talked to permanent guardianship, it's got to be you should have a conversation with the people that you elect. You want to have the conversation so you know what the people that are getting into. Nobody likes it, but you're saying, hey, before you sign them up, let them know that they've been elected, and just kind of have a casual but serious conversation that you are, hey, I'm electing you one of three people that I would like to have my children grow up with.
Yeah, well, sure. That then, I mean, because right, you would want to have that conversation up front so that you know that they're fully on board and they're willing to do that, rather than it comes as a surprise when they don't really care for kids that much, or they had totally different plans, or they have their own health concerns, or whatever it might be. Like that needs to be a conversation. So
Or they prefer dogs over kids.
yeah,
They say, I'll take the dog, not the kid. Like, I have nephews, they have four dogs. I'm like, when are you guys gonna have any kids? We have plenty with our dogs. Okay.
right, sure. Okay, so then, and we're gonna dive into the details. I want to talk more in detail about the living trust, the revocable living trust, but let's just go
Yep.
through real quick. So that estate plan, right? So the components were, we've got the guardianship document, right, where it says, okay, here's going to take care of my kids. If something happens to me, here's the list of people that can do it temporarily in the short term, and here's our long-term choice. There's a
And then
HIPAA.
you also have an exclusion. There's a portion if you wanted to exclude somebody, and I
Oh,
call it
okay.
the drunk uncle,
Oh,
right?
the
I
drunk
don't.
uncle exclusion. Okay, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. No, that's good. That's important to know. Okay. So
Yeah.
we've got the guardianship statement. You've got the HIPAA waiver, so that whoever you've designated, the next document would be your advanced directives for healthcare, right? So whoever is going to be making your healthcare decisions needs to be included in that HIPAA waiver so they can get information from your medical team. You've got your power of attorney for finances, so that someone can access, if you're incapacitated, that someone can then access your financial accounts and keep paying the mortgage payment or pay whatever other bills need to be paid, all that sort of stuff. And then you've got the pour over will, which allows you to automatically include anything you may have forgotten. It'll make sure it gets included in that living trust. And then we've got that revocable living trust, the revocable living trust, which I think a lot of people have heard about, and they know, oh, I need to do that. But what is it? What are the statistics? Like 2/3 of people in the US haven't done any sort of estate planning, don't have a trust. Is that about right?
That is correct. It's 68% of homeowners in America don't know. And this is one of the crusades that we started on this last month. When I read that, I said, you know what? That means we got to start we got to get on an awareness campaign. And this is why, Dominic, when I say thank you, it's thank you, your listeners, everybody that doesn't know, now they know. So 68% of homeowners don't have a living trust or an estate plan. And I come to the conclusion, it's not that they don't care, it's that they don't know.
Right.
And so I always tell people, now you know, you cannot unknow, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can, you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You know that it exists. If you don't have one, then you're saying to yourself and to your kids, it's okay that the government makes a choice for what happens to the stuff. One, and two, I'm okay with you paying it. And I've had that um have had that on some of our financial services customers say, them damn kids, they don't appreciate anything. They're gonna learn to grow up. However,
Well, not our
everybody
listeners, not
has,
our listeners. They're learning all about finances, right? Their
okay,
parents are
good.
teaching them. So no, kidding.
Okay, good. No, no,
Go ahead.
no, no. I when I hear that, I kind of like I laugh because I say, man, that's a good one, huh? I go, because some of these kids, they don't. He goes, my dog listens more than my kid. But however, I think it all starts at home, though, right?
Yeah.
I think if because I'm gonna tell you, um, my mother showed us love like there was no tomorrow. And she gave us a lot of attention. She says, I can give you the most important thing. I don't have a lot of money, but I can give you the work ethic. I can give you to be honest. I can teach you to be a good person.
Hmm.
But when you grow up, you have to make that decision on your own because now you're a grown up. You have to decide on what's best and if I did a good enough job. And so that's why I mean, most of our 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 families in some type of a profession or something, but we're self-taught. And people always ask, why are you guys, you guys are so lucky. I said, no, we were just raised right.
Hmm.
Mom taught us to do the right thing, and she always taught us to get up early and work as hard as you can.
Yeah.
And your honest money will last longer, and dishonest money will turn into water
Hmm.
and evaporate. So
Hmm.
we always do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. So let's get into then some of the details of a revocable living trust, right? So a lot of people don't know, those that do know but aren't familiar with it, I think it's a little bit overwhelming and they feel like, oh, I need to learn about that, but where do I even start? So let's give everyone the basics of what a living trust is and how it functions. So talk to us
Okay.
about that. Teach us
All right.
about living
So
trusts.
all right. So just about the actual living trust. The living trust is a contract. So the living trust's main purpose is to protect your assets and deciding on what you want to have happen. A revocable living trust means that you can make any changes that you want while you're still alive.
That's the
Wait,
revocable part, right?
that's
Yeah.
the revocable part,
Okay.
right? So that mechanism, so the main purpose is to notify the courts that you've done your work and this is what you want done, period. There is no question. It's not a question of what you wish to have happen. It's what you want to have happen and what will happen.
Okay.
So as far as protection is concerned, it's a you no longer own the asset once you put it in there. So you own the house, you put it into the living trust, you no longer own it.
The trust owns it.
The trust owns it.
Okay. So how does that work for people then? Does that freak people out then?
When you don't understand, like, what do you mean? That's my house. Well, you are the trustee. You control the trust. You are the trustee of the revocable trust. That means that you decide on what happens in the trust. You control the trust. So, in essence, you don't legally own it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But you control with what happens. So, the best way I can say it is you don't own it, but you control it. You decide on what happens, right? You don't own your children. You don't own your children, but you control them, right?
Well, up to a point when they're little.
Well, yeah, when
Yeah.
they turn 13, they already figured life out. They start to tell us, but to that point, I think that's how that revocable in depth that revocable trust. So you can add stuff, you can add, delete, add in there now, and I'll give you an example how it can protect it and how it does it. I like to use the story the tattooed son-in-law. Mom and daughter were on a vacation. This is a true story. On vacation in Puerto Vallarta, and they got in a car accident and they passed. The husband called and says, "Hey, my wife and daughter just died. Can you help me? I'm emotionally right now. I'm not ready, but I need to go in there and make a change in my living trust so my tattooed son-in-law doesn't end up with all my inheritance if I pass." Right? Because normally the trustee, when the wife passed, the husband became the trustee and the sole owner of the trust and the sole operator of the trust.
Okay. So she was the trustee before she passed.
Yeah, it's usually husband and wife are
Okay.
joint trustees.
Okay.
Okay? And they're joint trustees because when you create a trust, there's three options that you have. It's ours, his, or hers.
Yeah.
That's it. It's not or in my case, it's always hers. No, just kidding. Right? But so he called and says, "Yeah," and I said, "Yeah, no problem. When do you want to come in?" He goes, "You know what? give me about a week or two, but just remind me, put me on your text message and just start reminding me, make sure in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, before the 2 weeks were up, he passed.
Mm.
And his tattooed son-in-law just inherited his daughter's portion because he did not exclude him and have the inheritance go from the daughter to their grandkids, and now they had to liquidate because he demanded. It was a terrible situation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whatever happened to did the kids get any portion of that? And this is how attorneys get into the estate business, because it becomes a recurring service. When you get estate.prep.com, it becomes a lifetime access. You don't have to pay the attorney $1,200, $1,400 every time you need to make a massive change. And we're here to help you and assist you with that. Like, hey, I want to be able to do this. What to do? Well, we jump on a Zoom and we assist you, or me or one of our financial advisors, or we call them estate coordinators,
Mm-hmm.
assist you to be able to make those decisions and say, we don't give you legal advice, but we say, here's something that we have seen happen.
Sure.
And we take cases that we have seen and say, look, you might want to think about that. Or, you know what, the daughter's 18, she's getting married, then you know what, I'm gonna do that after. Well, you know what, you can do that addendum now and say, if she gets married, I want the spouse to be excluded, and I want to go to my grandkids, and I want the money to be held in the trust until they're 25.
Oh, okay.
Or through the 35. Like, we deal a lot with educators, and one of the things that the educators do is they say they can have access to the money for educational purposes, but it's only going to be for education, the school, some housing, not all, but some, and the cost of education. If they decide not to, they get no inheritance, no nothing until they're 35. Okay. And I said, why 35? She said, because that's usually when people mature, right? Mm-hmm. And they get a sum, and that was written into it. And I was like, that was an aha moment. Like, wow, that's deep planning, right? Mm-hmm. That's estate planning, like levels deep. That's just what happens to the rest of the money. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, so it sounds like you've got, so you take all of your assets, take your house, your cars, your 401k money, whatever other investments you might have, and you put all that stuff into this revocable living trust, right? So, yeah. And then you're now, or the parents are now the trustees of this trust, so they control those assets. So they can decide as the trustee if they want to sell that house, if they want to take out a HELOC on that house because they want to do a renovation, if they want to sell a car and buy a new car, if they want to sell some stocks and invest in other stocks, right? So they get to do all the same things that they normally did, right? When it wasn't in the trust, only now it's protected if something happens to them. But it also sounds like, in terms of planning farther down the line for when the parents are gone, if I'm understanding you correctly, they've got all kinds of flexibility. You can write that thing however you want to determine this person gets this or this person gets that, or these kids can have access to this money for these purposes at these ages, and after this age, then it changes. I mean, so you can write that thing however you want. Am I understanding that right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Cool.
So it's amazing. It's getting deep into that, and the more people I help, the more excited I get about the creativeness. And I always tell people, look, here's my phone number, call me. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about whatever you're thinking. I mean, and they're like, hey, let's come up with a way. The most I've had it is up 7 levels or 7 layers of legacy that they have, because, and this is that one that I was trying to tell you, she was a principal at one of an elementary school, and she came from money. She would, and I call it old money because I think she was like the second or third generation. It's an home, they had a farm, and the grandpa left them money, and then they get it, and then they excluded the husband, and I was like, well, how did you know that the trust does it. She goes, oh my, you ought to see my grandpa's trust. People really stay up at night to think about
Mm.
their legacy and their future. And
Hmm.
this is like when you hear generational wealth, I think that's where it comes from. People
Sure.
that thought that, you know what, I'm going to change the trajectory of my kids' future by doing that. Now, when you were talking about assets, it reminded me, like, yes, every asset we have seen many different. I mean, there's like a gun trust. If you have,
Sure.
like, if you own guns,
Hmm.
like, we have a lot of our clients in Texas
Hmm.
have guns. Some of them like have hundreds of firearms or just gun enthusiasts. Those guns get transferred into, it's called a gun trust. It's because it's an asset.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
there's firearms that are almost, you know, $3,000 $4,000.
Oh,
I
sure,
mean,
man. Well, and like you said, some people have a lot of guns, right? So that can be tens of thousands of dollars. Well, and you mentioned early on fragrances. Some people are really into watches. Tools, right? Tools can add up to a lot of money. I mean,
yeah,
obviously jewelry. I mean, all kinds of things. And so again, right, you can write all of those things or include all those things in the trust, and then write specifically what happens to those after you die, right? So again, you can write it as complex and as creatively or as specifically, I guess, as you want, right?
yeah.
So and then you can update it at any time. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Here's what I always tell people. The first thing is create the trust, add the primary asset, which is your home, right?
Sure.
Or your 401k or a retirement or a stock
Oh, sure,
or
man.
a living trust.
So put the
First do
big
that.
you're saying put the big rocks in the jar first. That
Yeah,
makes total sense. Yeah.
do that, cover it, do your trust, and then over time you start to add all of these layers of what you want to have happen
Sure.
over time. So I'll give you an example. We had in and I've never seen it and I didn't know about it, but their religious beliefs, they have what's in their church group, they have what's called seminary, where they go out for 3 years of their life they dedicate to the church, and
Hmm.
they go out to some other place. And they said, you know what, in order for my kids to qualify for my trust, they have to dedicate 3 years of the church, and I'm going to pay for it, pay for their living expenses, but they have to have that experience. And they put that in there. And I was like, wow, I didn't, that's how deep you can go, though,
Yeah.
is what I'm
Well,
saying.
and I mean that's really cool though, right? Because what just like there's so many different types of assets, right? Some people are really into guns, or some people it's their fragrances, or whatever it might be. There's no right or wrong to those things. Everybody's different, and the same can be true with how specific someone might want to get with their trust, right? If this religious component is really important to those people, and they want to sort of tie those things together, they have those options, right? I mean, they're not required to do those things, but if that's something that's important to people, and again, and if they change their minds or they want to modify that 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, they that's easy to do, right? They just do an
Yeah, you know,
update and
you log on to the website, you make the changes, you say the original date of or the last update from my it's called a restatement. It's called the
Mhm.
restatement. So where you say, is this a new living trust or is this a restatement? It's a restatement and it's dated January 1st, 2025. And now this one's it. So then it makes all the legal documentation. So now it becomes a layer of that living trust.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say start with one, take action, make it happen by protecting your home. If you're a homeowner, you don't have a living trust and you live in the United States, this is now you know that the government's going to decide for you if you don't.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
If you're okay with that, then I'm okay with it because it ain't gonna happen in my house,
Yeah,
right?
sure. So
Um,
then, so where people should start then, right? The first thing they should do is maybe just start making a list of all of their biggest, most obvious assets, right?
yes.
And then they have different options. We'll talk about those in a second, right? And go then they work up their estate plan, and they can fill out this whole list of they can work with you. You've got a service we'll talk about in a second, or someone locally that they know, however they want to do it. and they make sure they fill out all those forms. And for the living trust, they
Hmm.
start with getting their big assets, the big rocks in the jar. They get those in first, so all of their major stuff is now protected, and then they can, as they think of things as they go, they can add those in or modify or make specific requirements, whatever it is, as they go down the line. Is that right?
That is correct. And one of the things that we could do is I created this comprehensive workbook that I do for my workshops.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'll do is I'll create a landing page and people can download that. These are all the questions that are in the living trust when you created it. So you can print it out. I haven't got it printed because it started off with 7 pages. I'm at 30 pages now. But because
Wow.
people keep asking questions and I keep adding to it, right?
Sure, sure.
But it gives you a comprehensive, all the questions you should know for the basics of a comprehensive living trust.
Yeah, okay.
Not just a living trust, but a comprehensive living. You want to have all the basics, the foundation done.
Yeah.
Then you want to add the pebbles and the water and the sand and
Yeah.
everything else, right? You can get granular if you wanted to, but get the, what did you call it? The big
the
rocks in,
the big
right?
rocks. Yeah, that's an analogy for just kind of, when you're trying to accomplish something, right?
Right.
You want to put the big rocks in the jar first, because then you have room. If you put the little things in, then it seems full and you can't get the really important things in, right? And then that just, I thought it fit with what you were saying. Get your big assets protected, man. Get started, get it, do it, have those things in there, and then you can refine it as you go. But at least then your house, your cars, your 401k money, whatever your big things are protected, and they're not going to go to probate and be in there for who knows how long, and your kids then are paying a bunch of extra money. Now it's part of the trust, and it's way more straightforward, less expensive, and better for everyone.
Yes. And it's like everything else, right? Take action. Um,
Yeah.
Tomorrow will never come, and yesterday is gone.
Yeah, right.
So today is the day, right? When you're listening to this now, you know what? There's options on the website for payment plans. I mean, it's $1,400, but for some people, $1,400 could be 10. It might as well be 10 million, right?
Yeah, sure.
But it's normally 2,500 with a kids. It's kids. It's FL Kids.
Fi kids.
FI Kids. Sorry, I wrote it down wrong. Um, my mom gave me other talents, or God gave me other talents, or academics wasn't one of them. No. So FL Kids is the discount code, and you'll save $1,000 to take action today. It's the first 10 people that log on. You'll get it's $1,000 savings, so that would be 1495, and then you could also use what's called an affirm, which you get no payments for 12 months, no interest, no payments.
Yeah,
So
okay.
there's absolutely no reason. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so what you're saying is, so right, so you provide this service. So if someone wants to use your service, right, they've listened today, right, so they're going to go to estate doc, as in document, estatedocplanning.com.
Prep.
Oh, state,
Estate.
sorry, I'm sorry.
It's
Estate
okay.
prep, say it again.
Dominic, you can make one mistake a year. That was it. No, just
So yeah, estatedocprep.com. And I'll put this in the show notes and put it on the FI for Kids website. And then, right, so normally, right, so if they want to do this through you, it's $24.95. What you're saying is if they put in the promo code FI Kids, then they'll save $1,000, and then they can get their estate planning started, and they can do it through you for $14.95.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And that is for life. That gives you a lifetime. There is whenever you need an update and it's been more than a year, there's a one-time fee, and that helps update for all the new laws for every state. So what we do is we share that cost over hundreds of users and thousands of users to share that cost to update all the software. But here's the most important thing on that is that it's comes with unlimited updates, and you could do it now, you could do it later, and you could take all the time. There's no expiration, but we work with you along the way. Now if you wanted to have There's payment options on there. There's financing options. There's 0%. The only reason why you wouldn't do it is that one, you don't have any kids, you don't own a house. That's
Sure.
it. I mean, those are the people that, I mean, if you have a bunch of money and you don't have any kids, I mean, and you're okay not getting it. I mean, I have one boy, but I have many nephews and nieces in my family, but they're like my kids because
Sure.
I grew up around them, so we were very close knit. So I
Hmm.
would just say take action. Don't wait. Make this happen. And I mean, we're here to help. Now, if you have any questions about estate planning, you can call our office. We have a 24-hour artificial intelligence estate doc prep document. She's an artificial intelligence. She sounds real, but she can answer any questions about estate doc at 805-909-4689. Even if you just wanted to talk to artificial intelligence about estate doc. Now, it'll get you the information so you don't feel like you're going to get sold. We're not here to sell you. We're here to give you and educate you, give you the information. It's up for you to decide on what's right for you and your family and when that time is.
Yeah. Okay, great. So and your biggest piece of advice though is get started. Do something, take action, sooner rather than later.
If we knew our expiration date, then I would say wait till the very last day.
Yeah, sure.
Right. But we don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a saying in our culture. It says, if when it's your time, even if you get out of the way, you're still going. And if it's not your time, even if you get in the way, you're not going.
Hmm.
So, we don't know. So I would just say that, and go in. But estate planning is something that's a great passion. I've seen I couldn't tell you the number, and I can give one more thing that I could say. If you have a doubt that probate exists, start asking your friends and family, who do they know that went through the probate process, and if they would prevent that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ask that question.
Yeah.
And you ask that enough, you're going to hear some stories like, wow, I don't want I mean, you know, if you don't want that for your kids, then it's only you can prevent that. Only you.
Yeah.
And us as parents, right? Only us.
Yeah.
Part of our obligation, I think, like people say, what motivates you? And I say, what motivates me is to be able to give my family the lifestyle that I only dream of. But more importantly, I think that knowing that everything is taken care of when I'm gone is even more peace of mind than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's taken care of, and then it's not like we talked about early on. It's not this strung out, ongoing, stressful process, right? They've got to open it up in probate to sort of public discourse. Anybody can come in and sort of try to lay some sort of a claim or just muck up the works. And so just I think anybody, if they could avoid that, if there was an option to avoid that, and there obviously is, then they would want to take advantage of that, so one way or the other. Okay, well, and just one more time, it is estatedocprep.com. I will put that in the show notes. It'll be a clickable link, so anyone wants to go there, check out the website, check out their resources, or consider using Oscar's services, you'll be able to do that. I'll also include that phone number in there, Oscar, so in case they want to call and just ask questions of your AI virtual assistant. Thank you so much for coming on. I think this is very useful information for everyone. So I really appreciate it, Oscar.
Well, thank you for helping us on our crusade to be able to create awareness in the estate planning process. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for listening to this episode of the FI for Kids podcast. Please support the show by hitting subscribe and receive new episodes every Thursday. The intro and exit music this episode are courtesy of Douglas Cameron. As always, you can find links to the FI for Kids music in the show notes. Thanks again, and we'll talk next week.